Thomas Gagliardi, the Gagliarchives. We've been starting this new portion of the show called Ask Us Anything. And you've seen these in other social media websites, video content creators, etc. And many of you have sent some great emails. And when I tell you that we literally have a folder just from the last 3 months of emails of people asking about certain moments, the nuances of the radio show, etc. And when we use these emails, you can be sure that we are going to send you guys a prize package. Could be a thumb drive of music, could be new music that we got, new CD releases, whatever happens to come down the pike. We've got it, and it's good stuff. So I got to thank each and every one of you for sending these great emails. And this one comes to us from Brian and Levent, who are they're both brothers, former Philadelphia residents, now out in Seattle. And one of the questions they asked were some of the spooky moments that you've had as a radio disc jockey. I know Brian, who listened to us religiously for 8 straight years before he moved out west, said when he was listening through the Nets Progressive Rock Garden that there were a couple crazy stories. And yes, we did have a radio station across from minimum security prison that actually had prisoners who had escaped. I had found out from Henry, who was the night security guard at Z889 for so many years, and I thought he was kidding. And whenever Henry worked behind the desk, there was always something crazy that would go on. And one night, I get a call on the red phone, which was the phone internally in the at Burlington County, and he said, "I need you to stay up in the studio and make sure the front door's locked." I was kind of confused. Why would I need to do that? Well, the minimum security prison across the street from the radio station, apparently guys escaped, and they've been seen wandering. This is before they started setting up the digital cameras everywhere, even in the radio station itself. So this was a bit scary. So I had to stay in the studio till, I don't know, maybe about 4 o'clock in the morning. And Henry and I would have these strange things that would go on. And but the earliest memory I have of something crazy that happened where it was creepy was going all the way back to 1992, back in the early days of the Gagliarchives radio show when we were at 91.5 FM WDBK in Blackwood. This was at CCC. And I had just been given, through Karen Kazachin, the Wednesday night shift of 8 to midnight, which was a big deal because you had Nurse Laurie and Nurse Erin of the mental hospital. On one night, you had Chip, who was on the high note. He did the jazz show. You had the Hitman. All these guys who had the night shift. I mean, you made it. You were there. So one night, I'm playing King Crimson in the Wake of Poseidon. And this was just when we transitioned from the Lost Satellite to Gagliarchives. And I cannot remember this guy's name for the life of me. But the phone rings. It was 609-227-8070, I remember. And telling the audience to give us a call on the hotline. Well, this guy did. And it was about 10:30. The show was from 8 to midnight. So about 10:30, almost 11. This guy calls in and says, "You're playing in the Wake of Poseidon." I said, "Yes." He's like, "You should play King Crimson Lizard." So I said, well, we didn't bring Lizard. Now, we used to bring crates of vinyl records. There were, shoe boxes of cassettes. It was a disaster. Why would you? When you're a young DJ, you just want to be out to impress, So he said, "Where's King Crimson Lizard? You need to play that." I said, "Well, I didn't bring that with me." He said, "You don't have it? I'm on my way up." So I said, no, that's okay. He's like, "See you in a bit." Click. Okay, so I hear this like devilish laugh in the background before the phone hangs up. And I guess about 10 minutes went by, and the phone rings again. And a couple times first, my brother had called, a couple other listeners. And then the phone rings again, and here, this guy who had called in 10 minutes before is now at Wawa, which is about a quarter mile from the studio. He says, "Hey, do you need us to grab you anything?" I'm like, "Who is this?" "I'm on my way up with King Crimson Lizard." I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. See you in a few. So At this point, I think at the time I was 20 years old. I wasn't even 21 yet, and so I shut all the lights in the hallway where the radio studio was located. I believe it was the John F. Kennedy Center at Camden County College, if I remember correctly. And this was the community center. This was the big building. And here comes security. And I let him know, listen, there's a guy, maybe a couple people who want to bring music up to the studio, and I do not want this guy to come in to the college, So not even, 10 minutes later, I hear the big front metal doors close. So I shut all the lights out in the studio. I shut the hallway light. I have the lobby, the program director's office, all the lights out. And the doorbell rings. And the doorbell keeps ringing. So at the time, I was playing The Devil's Triangle from In the Wake of Poseidon. And, you hear the music. I couldn't turn the music off in the lobby, so the guy knew I was on the air. So I come to the door. Finally, I tried to call security. The line was busy. It was like a horror movie. It was like perfect setting for a horror movie. And I get to the window, and I can't see anybody. All of a sudden, this big head comes into the glass, and he had a glass eye. When somebody has a glass eye, and, wasn't straightening. And he just, boom, right there in the window. And he's like, "Are you Tom?" And I'm like, not opening the door. He's like, "King Crimson Lizard. How about we come into the studio?" I'm like, no. So the guy slips it under the door. And I never heard from the guy again. He just, put a little note inside the cassette. "Hey, thanks. Keep playing the King Crimson." So that was like one of my first scary moments. The other one that comes to mind, and this wasn't as funny. There's three moments I think of that were scary. The second scariest was not paranormal or anything like that. It was the night that Henry, the security guard, after years of not being at the radio station on Saturday nights, he had been promoted to the manager of security at Z8889. He was working during the days now, so he didn't have to be in the overnights. And apparently someone called out sick. And this also happened to be the same night that Chris Squire of Yes passed away. And it was a very bizarre night. About 2 a.m. the lights were flickering in the studios, and things seemed really bizarre that night. Couldn't quite figure out what it was. And I had forgotten things. I was living in Brigantine. I still am here at North 13th Studios. But we did like the pre-production here. Also then it's at Asylum Studios in Pemberton, about half a mile from the studio. And then to the radio station. Well, usually we would just report back to Jack at Asylum Studios, and we would work on the final, after the show, file, save, putting it on the network, etc. Well, this particular night, it was bad because I had forgotten, not only my laptop hard drive, but I'd forgotten my medication. I'd forgotten all this crazy stuff, my nerve medication for my spine. So I knew I had to go back home, back to Brigantine, which is a solid 48 minutes from the studio. If you're driving at top speed through the Pine Barrens, but which you can't do with deer and all kinds of little woodland critters at night. But this night was crazy because at 2:25 in the morning, my cell phone starts ringing out. It was kind of weird because where the radio station was, for those that remember where Z88.9 was located, it was very remote. You didn't have this great reception because you're literally in the middle of the Pine Barrens. And you couldn't get a signal in the studio because we were behind so many metal walls. And if you did get a signal, you had to be all the way in one corner of the studio for maybe your phone to work. Well, strangely enough, my phone starts ringing after the radio show. It's about 2:20 in the morning. And it's a journalist with 24 numbers showing up. I'm like, hello? And this really nice guy, heavy Italian accent, says, Tom, I'm a big fan of the show. I write articles about progressive rock, and I just wanted to get your opinion on Chris Squire. So I said, well, he's great. I mean, he's the main reason why I love Yes was Chris Squire. He said, no, your opinion, I want to get a quote on, he morta, he passed away. And I was confused. This was like July of, I think, 2015 or whatever it was. And I said, what are you talking about? He's like, you didn't hear? Chris passed away from cancer earlier tonight. I'm stunned. I think it was like one of the very few progressive rock artists that I actually teared up. Like, oh man, later with Keith Emerson I did. But I was really just, wow, And my phone's breaking up, and I said, I'm sorry. Can I call you back or email you? And as I'm packing up because we were back on Twitch in those days, we did the video and the radio broadcast. So I contact Jack at Asylum Studios, Jack Webster, my co-producer, tell him I'm going to head back to Brigantine. I'm going to shoot back out in the afternoon on Sunday. And as I'm walking down the stairs, this was a crazy night. As I'm walking downstairs to go say goodbye to Henry, who I hadn't seen at night in, 8 years, I said, well, Henry, we had a clean night, no crazy stuff. He said, you can't leave. I said, yeah, right. He's like, no, I'm dead serious. You can't leave. What are you talking about? He's like, we've been, we've gotten a phone call that a guy caught his girlfriend with another guy, and he's got them both at gunpoint on the college campus, and that he's going to do something to them because he caught her cheating on him. Well, we later found out we were being swatted. Well, we didn't know at that moment. So I could not leave the studio. I had to stay there for an additional hour and a half. Later, I had to be escorted out by the police. They had to surround my Jeep to get me out onto County Route 530. So, we later found out it was all a scam. Nothing happened. That was crazy. And it was all, I guess, revenge on a guy who lived in Browns Mills down the road. So that was like the third scariest thing that ever happened doing this radio show in 30 years, where it still haunts me to this day. I've seen strange things. I've seen, one night I thought there was a thunderstorm, and then I realized that the skies were clear. There was no thunderstorm. Here, this guy plowed into a telephone pole, making the transformer explode in 13 different colors, mainly purple. So I realized it's not thunder, and here this transformer is hanging above this guy's brand new Cadillac Eldorado, and I couldn't walk over to the car because I was afraid this thing, it's sparking, it's hanging down. And then a guy who's coming from eastbound towards the radio station from Philadelphia to the Pine Barrens, at the last minute he sees this guy crash into the telephone pole. Well, he does a total 180. The car is spinning, misses my car by maybe 4 centimeters, maybe. So there was that. But the one that always will get me, and I wish I was lying to you on this, when I moved to Brigantine, I had to figure out routes to get to the radio station that would cut out a lot of time. So one of the main routes was to get on the White Horse Pike and then get on to where Smithville is, eventually taking you onto the Parkway, and then eventually you're going to go through Bass River Township. Bass River, where, they used to be called Randolph Township. I do the South Jersey history moments. And there's literally in the middle of nowhere. And this is right before you start hitting the Bass River part of the New Jersey Pine Barrens, Wharton State, all that. So once I had it all figured out, it was a 47-minute drive from North 13th Studios here to Pemberton with no traffic. Usually on a Saturday afternoon, there's, you're not going to deal with that. A clean 47 to 48 minutes, and on average, it was that. I get done the radio show, and I was having problems with my then second Jeep, my 1999, the one that was gold, if those who know me, like goldish bronze. And I knew immediately what the problem was. The alternator was going. When you're accelerating, the lights are dimming, one of those moments. So when I was leaving the radio station, we had the security guard who was on deck that night. He helped push start my Jeep. So the whole fear at that point is you can't turn the Jeep off to get back to Brigantine to my mechanic. And I love my mechanic. He's the man. And I texted him. He said, drop it off. I'm actually going in on Sunday. I'll look at it Sunday afternoon. If you know it's definitely the alter, I said, I know it is. So in order to understand, I'm going to put up the map here of how you get to the radio station from Brigantine and then how you get home. It's pretty much the same route. Well, here's what got really strange one night. I'm coming back from Pemberton, coming down 563, which is the road through Chatsworth near Ocean Spray, which is basically the heartland of the Pine Barrens. Then once you hit that part, you're now going the other side of South Jersey. Now you're going, the east side to the coast. The difference is there's no places to stop to make a phone call. Your cell phone will barely have a signal. And I was never one to be scared of driving at night, but you had to be careful because there were deer that would jump out, the old cranberry bogs that weren't being used anymore. So you had to kind of take your time. And being in a Jeep, at least you're elevated. If you hit something, God forbid, and I have, it would push in the grill. I had to get 2 new grills in the first year, hitting, unfortunately deer that survived, but the grill didn't. As I'm coming through, and I'm coming towards Bass River Township, which is now going to take me to Route 9, which will take me to the New Jersey Garden State Parkway, then to get to Atlantic City. So, as I'm coming down the road that will take you to Route 9, I'll show you on the map if you see it right here. There's this woman that comes out of nowhere on the street. And this woman is flagging me down. Now, the first thought in my mind is, well, I'm not turning the Jeep off. If I turn the Jeep off, I'm screwed. Because I do not want to have to be trying to find a way to push start in the middle of the Pine Barrens. Not happening. So I stop, and reluctantly, here's this young girl who is got her head in her hand. She's crying. Her car is parked on the side. It was like this silver car. Couldn't quite make out what it was. And she's like almost sobbing into her hands. And I said, hi, what can I do for you? She's like, I'm lost. I don't know where I am. I had this really horrible night. I just want to go home. And when you're trying to wait for that moment for that person to kind of like pick their face up so you can get a better look at them to see like what's going on here, Well, this woman wouldn't do that. And it was dark. There wasn't much in the way of street lights. There was finally civilization because I'm like right on the edge of it because you can see there's an elementary school. So I knew I was close. So, she would not look at me, but I could see that she's crying. Her face is wet from her crying. I could see the mascara on her face. And I could see the mascara on her face. And when she looked at me, I guess because of the way the light was reflecting, there was these dark shadows in her, what were her eyes. Now I'm thinking, well, I just can't see her face that good. So she says to me, what's the closest place? I said, well, you're not far from Atlantic City. I'm going. She's like, well, that's where I need to go. And I'm thinking, well, you're not, I had my laptop bag. I had my overnight bag. I'm sorry, but my alternator's bad on my car. Why don't you that's your car there. Just follow me. So what happens next is something I still think about to this day, because here I am with a car that's about to die in the middle of nowhere. And I'm still stopping to try to help this person. And I said to her, well, just follow me. I'll get you to the Garden State Park. She goes, that'll be great. So the road is you make a right, and it's another mile, maybe 2 miles, maybe 2 to 3 miles, a straight line with no turnoffs, except for maybe like a house here or there. But it is a straight line until it bends. Maybe you can see it on the map here, where it bends, and then it's this out of nowhere exit to the Garden State Parkway, like the Bat Cave. You know what I mean? So this woman is following me, but she's following me so close that her headlights are gone. Like, I'm thinking she's going to hit me. She's going to hit the back of my Jeep. And if she hits the back of my Jeep and I stall out, I'm screwed. So the road is coming to that bend I was telling you about, where boom, you pop out of nowhere and there's the parkway. Like, you can see the coastline, you can see Atlantic City, like seeing Vegas from an airplane. So you're okay, civilization. As I make the turn, this blaring set of headlights behind me disappear. And when I tell you disappear, at one point I'm saying she's so close she's going to hit me, to there's no more headlights. So I have no alternator. I'm running off the battery. When I accelerate, the lights are dimming. So I slow down, looking at my rearview mirror. Where'd she go? So I turn around and I'm mad, because I didn't even want to help this person, but now maybe she turned off or she stopped. So I go back in reverse. I start going around the bend. There's no car, and there's nowhere for anyone to turn off. And you can see, as I said, for almost 2 straight miles, 2 to 3 miles, till you hit this little hamlet where there's a street light and a liquor store. There's no cars. This girl's car is not there. I sat there in disbelief, literally with the flashlight looking around me. There's nowhere for anybody to go off. And to answer Brian and Levent, the weirdest thing in 30 years of doing the radio show was that night. I have no idea where that person went. One of my best friend's mom's a medium, and she said, some people attract certain anomalies, and maybe something happened to somebody on that road. Maybe but when I tell you that the reluctance I had stopping the car to begin with, not because, you're bothering me, but something didn't feel right. But here I am, being a dope, helping this person out. But she wouldn't look at me. Her head stayed down. And when she did look, there was nothing there. It was crazy. But we still carried a conversation as if I was talking to anybody else. And I said, you just follow me. I'll get you to the parkway. And if you need to go to the Atlantic City area, like you said, you'll be good. She's right behind me. Where'd she go? Now, I would have loved to have pondered this more, but I was more in a panic that the Jeep was going to die. And now I'm getting close to E. And I dropped the car off at my mechanic that night. He fixed it the next day. And, even he said, "Is something wrong? Did something happen last night?" And I said, "I got to tell you this story." So that was the craziest thing to answer you and Brian and Levent. Those were just a few stories, but that one, that's the one I think about. I mean, there were some other scary moments where the New Lisbon minimum youth prison, the minimum security youth prison, where these kids had broke out, and here I am on 563, cutting through, getting to Bass River, and they had cut through the Pine Barrens to get away and had stopped me for, a ride to Atlantic City. I just kept rolling, and I just thought it was weird that these kids were out in the middle of nowhere, and I called the Red Lion State Police, New Jersey State Troopers, and the woman told me that they had 6 kids that had escaped, and thank you for the heads up of where they were, because they later detained them. But of all the stories, the girl on that right outside Route 9 story, I never forgot that. So happy Halloween.